well, welcome everybody. This is a very special Alley Chat presentation coming to you from Boutwell's in Concord, New Hampshire. My name is Kyle Bruce, and along with the legendary Frank Face, we are here with another legend, a Hall of Famer, a President's Cup recipient, competitor, proprietor, executive. You're a jack of all trades, Dan Murphy.
Yeah, master of none.
That's untrue. That's untrue. And actually, we'll touch upon that humility a little bit later on. Frank and I are here to attend the ICBA Instructor School that, Dan, you've done for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's been probably 30, 35 years that I've been conducting them. Yeah, we've probably certified, well in excess of 1,000 students. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dan, I have but one question. Did we pass?
Well, I always say if you're going to listen to me for 2 or 3 hours, you deserve to pass, but I'll let you know in another day or two.
Okay, very good.
It's very good to try to butter up the instructor before.
Yes, of course.
Right. That's a very.
I'm looking for my
strategy.
apple.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Well, maybe we can settle for the Mountain Dew.
Well, we have free returns. We can come
There you
back
go.
for another class. So.
Right. That's good. That's a very good plug, by
Yeah,
the way.
right,
It's
right.
another benefit.
No, I thought that the class was absolutely fantastic, Dan.
Thank you.
As Kyle pointed out to me a while ago, I have a multi-step approach, which is like 15 steps. But I think what you showed me today, I'm going to try the 3-step approach. Considering how confusing and thwarting my approach is, I think it's going to maybe cause less injury.
No, I'll tell you right now, and I told you this before, Frank, I felt like even just trying to implement that on maybe through 10 or 12 balls using a 3-step approach.
Sure.
I mean, I think you're going to do very well, and that's going to minimize some mistakes, and I think that'll bode some dividends down the road, especially heading into the spring and there being playoff time and everything else.
Right.
So,
I'll just take a cut of your winnings, that's all.
That's, you're entitled to it, Dan.
10% or
Yeah,
even?
that's fine.
Wow, you got to
Yeah.
start somewhere.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's great. So you developed a strategy and a program to teach instructors how to teach bowlers that either don't know anything about bowling, or people that are just generally do open bowling, or people that are in league bowling that they want to go to the next step above.
You're right. Everything from a novice, just a beginner bowler, to the seasoned bowler, and we can always point out a few things. I always relate it to like golf, Jordan Spieth, and they have their own instructors. And a lot of times it takes someone from the outside say, what am I doing? Myself included, and I have some great instructors here, says, just watch me. And they'd point, Dan, I think you're doing this, I think you're doing that. So it does help. And sometimes going through the school, you're able to pick out some of the things you might be doing, but sometimes it takes another instructor to watch you and pick up some really good things that will help you.
Right, because not only are they is another set of eyes, but someone who might be a little bit more objective, because if you get used to watching your style for, being bowling for a lot of years, that wasn't an insult, that was actually a credit to you, you can maybe overlook accidentally some of the things that the nuances of your delivery and approach, and might overlook it by accident. So
exactly, and I'll say, look, when in doubt, go back to the basics.
Right.
We talk about the 3-step approach is all you need. You don't change somebody if they have a 4-step approach and they feel comfortable with it. But staying down, following through, all those little things, sometimes just go back to the basics and you'll correct a lot of the flaws.
Now, when you were very young, who taught you how to bowl?
My parents bowled. And I would go and watch them bowl in the couples league or something like that, and afterwards I'd get to throw a game, and I really picked up the knack very quickly. I had some great instructors back then who worked with me, and then I was fortunate enough when Channel 5 had Winning Pins. There was the youth of Channel 5, and I was able to get onto that. But I picked it up right away and just loved it. Couldn't get enough of it.
Was that the Bill O'Connell show, or was that Jim Britt?
That was Jim Britt for a while, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
because he started 5 and
Yes,
Gillis took over and
exactly.
such. And it must not have taken that long for you to progress to the point that you could appear on TV, to be on Winning Pins. Is there something being that young and being on television, to be used to the lights and an audience, that really set the tone for your career?
Well, I think when you're that young, you're too young to choke.
Mm-hmm.
So the lights don't bother you. I think they bother you more when you're an adult version, because then now you're bowling for some serious money.
Right.
Even though you can't make a living at Candlepin Bowling, it certainly is it could be a lucrative hobby. And
Right.
I think the lights in the crowd and stuff. But when I started bowling competitively, I remember it was the Palmer, Massachusetts. It was the alley owner, and he picked up 4 of us youth bowlers. We bowled in a travel league. And back then, like I say, in courtesy in Candlepin Bowling, you never talked to the person next to you. Well, we learned to bowl with, they hated the kids beating them. So we just had the guy standing behind us yelling and screaming at us. So we were able to, and myself, we're able to block that out and concentrate just on my game. So a lot of stuff I don't hear what goes on around me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And were you able to maintain that level of focus throughout your career? And that was
that was a big thing. And my mother used to follow me around, and she was a great critic. And if I acted up on the lane, she'd say, it's easy to be a good winner, but to be a good loser, So I learned how to accept defeat too. Although I couldn't wait to get back at that guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Short memory, I suppose.
Right.
And we had just talked before we started the broadcast about when you made Channel 5 the first time. Was it 69, I want to say?
I think it was 85. The first time on, I don't think it was in the 60s. I think it was early 80s. Yeah, I may look older than I am, but it's not.
No, my dates.
No, I don't think so.
That's good. There's my credibility we talked about.
There you go.
We might as well just stop now. I've ruined everything.
Yeah, I think it was 85, but I may be wrong. The time flies,
Yeah, because I remember 85, that was the first live show that you were on.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that was the year I had 6 or 7 wins, and 6 of them were
400s in a row.
400s, yes.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate. And, the very first match was Alex, somebody, I can't remember his last name.
Pendleton?
Yes. And he had me
Wow.
with 3 boxes to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lucky enough to I threw a backdoor strike, but then I threw a real one on top of it and won by 3 or 4 pins. And then I went on to have a good streak. So, you got to be a little lucky in this game, too.
Right. Well, you have to capitalize on the breaks that you do
Yeah.
get. And, that's part of the game. And one of the things that we try to do on the Classic Candlepins TV show is take statistics of the pins that you leave standing. And you mentioned in the class that it was 8 pins that you...
Yeah, 8 or better in a box. I'm
Right.
real happy with that,
That you used as a barometer.
Unless I miss 5 single pins for spares, I'm probably not real happy about
right,
that.
Right, that's
of
the
course.
other thing,
Yeah.
And, some people say it's the hardest shot. Some people say it's the easiest shot because it's only like 12 or 13 inches
That's right.
diameter, if you take the ball on either side of the pin. But that can be the difference in the match. I'd like to talk a bit about your role in being not just an on-air talent, but being a producer for Candlepin Bowling and on multiple shows. I want to say Channel 50 was on in '84, correct?
I believe so, yes, in
Right.
the early 80s.
Can you walk us through how the genesis of Stars and Strikes and how that came to be?
Well, I think the driving force was Doug Brown, who I did the show with, and he was full-time at WNDS TV. And it was his driving force that, I know Candlepin Bowling, I'm from New England, it would be a great thing for the station. And that's how that got it. And we evolved from the 3-string match, and we also did then a skins game for a while. So it was multiple shows with WNDS. But over the years, you found that, you got to sell the advertising. That's not my forte, that's the station. And it becomes very, very expensive. You got multi-cameras, as you people know.
Sure.
And a lot of times you got to tape on the weekend, so it's overtime for some of those people.
Right.
And really, that's what happened with Channel 5. And I remember going to the meeting and talking to a young lady, and I said, you get such good ratings on Channel 5. I can't understand that. And she says, Dan, you got to understand. No one calls us and says, I want to advertise on the bowling show. We place the advertising there. And the ratings, if we have Candlepin today, I don't know if it would get that ratings, because back then it was either NBC, ABC, or CBS. You had 1 out of 3 shots of picking that show up, and I think that's what helped it. And then when NCAA football came, they backed it off to 10 to keep those ratings
10:30.
up. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
So they manipulated that way. Not that it wasn't popular. It was very a popular show. But, again, multiple cameras. Don Gillis was getting a hefty paycheck.
Right.
And
Ralph, too.
Yeah.
From what
sure,
I hear.
yeah.
No, I'm serious.
Really.
But Ralph said the same thing about sponsors, which we came to our surprise that they
Right.
didn't have any sponsors. They were placing advertisement. That
Right.
comes to me as a shocker.
Especially when you consider, as you walk into Boutwell's here at the front counter, there's a copy of The Light Side of Candlepin Bowling, which was a book that you talked about.
Yes.
When I was a kid, and I have a copy at home, and in that book it has a copy of a newspaper copy of the ratings of the Nielsen ratings back then, and how Channel 5 dominated. When the Red Sox went to the World Series in '88, again they won the division 80, 88, and 90. Celtics with their 3 world titles. Pats went to the Super Bowl 20, and you have at the top Candlepin Bowling.
Yes.
It's very, very interesting. Was it a conscious decision for Stars and Strikes to be on Saturday at noon?
Yes. We talked about that a number of times. Where would it fit the best? And was it at noontime?
Well, it started at noon, and then it went back to 11.
Yeah.
Later
yeah,
on, and
right.
then they'd bump
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and when the waning years of it, they wanted to move it like to Wednesday night at 10 o'clock. I'm saying, you're going to kill the show. No one's going to watch it at that time. And so they would manipulate it to fit their schedule too. And I think WNDS is kind of an independent station. It wasn't, they had full-time news people back then.
Right.
But they eventually got away from that too. So I think it was. They talked a lot about it, and Doug and I talked about it, and we thought, 11 o'clock is probably good, So Channel 5 was still going on too, so you pick them both up, yeah.
Right. And then I think the year afterwards, you have NESN with Big Shot Bowling, and you being the analyst on that. And something that, or at least it's been in the back of my mind anyways, is that I always felt like you made a conscious effort to help have each show establish its own identity.
Yes. Big Shot Bowling had its own identity because it had Bob Fouracre.
Yes.
Of course.
He always was outside the envelope all the time, on some of the things he's, we can say this. I'm not going to say in this show because we're on cable. I says, Bob, we can't say that, And I know one time I had missed the taping, whether I was sick or as a tournament or something. So when I missed the taping, I missed 4 weeks.
Right.
Well, he had me being abducted and in Russia. It was like bizarre, but that was Bob, and he was a dude. But he loved Candlepin Bowling. He was a great promoter. Oh, some people he rubbed the wrong way.
Well, he was very enthusiastic, and that's what I liked about him. And we saw Jack Ray at Sunnyside for the Pro Series a month ago, and he walked right by me, and I said, that man had the best nickname for anybody in Candlepin Bowling, to me, and that was Action Jackson.
Yeah, Action Jackson.
Oh,
yeah.
it was the best.
He was the smoothest form. You never heard that ball hit the lane with
Yep.
Jackie Ray throwing a ball.
Yep.
On top of it, he was just a great, great person.
Right. Now, when Big Shot Bowling started, I remember I watched probably the first dozen shows anyway, years afterwards, and the rankings of the previous year's Pro Tour is how you started taping, correct? Because I think
Yes.
it was Mike Sargent and Tom Olsta, because Olsta was Bowler of the Year, I think, and went down the line.
Yeah, we worked in conjunction with the WCBC Pro Tour, and I forget exactly how we did it. We took the winners of some of the tournaments and brought them on that way, or had a special roll-off and took the top 5 or something like
Right.
that. Yeah, it's so long ago. I forget how exactly we determined, but we were in conjunction with the WCBC Pro Tour, yes.
Now, is that a conscious, did Bill Bolton come to you and say, or come to NESN, or come to Six-Gun Productions and say, there aren't as many bowlers as there were maybe 10 years ago on the tour. Maybe this is a way to bring some bowlers back and have them be on TV.
It wasn't Bill Bolton. Bill Bolton was in the NBA.
Okay.
At the time, I think Don Riley might have been the president of the WCBC, but it was more Bob Fouracre.
Okay.
And he found a sponsor that was willing to put up a lot of money, John Liggums,
Right.
at the time. And he was some kind of a stockbroker or something. And, he really didn't care if he made a lot of money at it as long as, he broke even. So
Right.
Bob Fouracre went out and got the advertising, and he kind of funded the show. and we worked in, because Bob knew the Pro Tour and how we all, so got the cream of the crop on the show, which helped.
Right. And then you just happen to throw 467 on there, which
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt.
You know, I also threw, I can always remember this, and I could hear Bob Fouracre laughing in the background because I got a spare, and I punched out the 3-pin for 1 on a spare. But then I picked the spare up. Reset the machines, I picked out the 2-pin. So I went spare 1, spare 1. Well, I thought he was going to die behind. Jeez.
Superlative.
Yes, superlative, right.
I keep stealing his material because it's just some of it's just so. I've never said superlative though that I can think of.
Right. So I don't think you have either.
Right.
But you've probably come to the point of abusing Mrs. Riley's duck soup.
Oh my God! See, I started using that, and
that's
people are
right,
like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
"What do you mean? What am I talking about? How do you not know about Mrs. Riley's duck soup?"
Now, you know Bob Fouracre did Holy
20.
Cross basketball, too.
Yes.
Yeah. Tickle the twine, I think, is one of his sayings.
Yeah.
In that,
Yeah. I think he's still doing it. Right?
he might be.
Yeah, and he's doing stand-up comedy, which would be interesting to check out. I think.
Very interesting.
That's one word for it.
Someday. I hope he's local. We can go check him out.
I think he's still in Worcester. I
All right.
guess.
I'm sure
I
it
don't
probably is R-rated, and
Yeah.
knowing Bob.
know. Oh, that's okay. Maybe we can have a 30-minute sample of it after this broadcast.
Yes, we
Might
could.
bring a whole new demographic to everything. So, you mentioned the advertising in terms of Channel 50, and that was, I think you had the double show for a while, then that went to Skins, and then I remember it transitioned from Park Place over to Pilgrim for the Skins. I remember,
Right.
yeah, maybe for a year or two, what have you, and then there's kind of a break in, well, at least in you appearing on TV, and then. The Comcast show, or I guess it was AT&T Broadband at that
time,
particular
yes,
point in
yeah.
time. Now, is that a similar startup in terms of, like the way Channel 50 was, just getting that show off the ground?
I know they called me to a meeting. He says, we got somebody interested in doing a TV show. And I said, who is it? And they said AT&T, Broadband, whatever it was. And so they had a couple of people from the station come in and say, we'd like to run this. We need some input. What would be best? I said, well, you probably should go the 3 strings like it was, And I said, to change it up, maybe we should do a ladder series. And that's what we started doing. And the winner of each ladder would come back at the end of the year. And at that time, I remember we went to the proprietors, and I was a proprietor here, and we had to raise $90,000. That was for prize money, shirts for the bowlers, had to pay the scorekeeper and stuff like that.
You pay the time to AT&T, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
and that's what they were figuring. So that went on for a while, and then, of course, Comcast jumped in, and they were a little more strict. They wanted now between $125,000 and $135,000.
Wow.
And that's what killed it. I mean, the proprietor said, how can I recoup my money from this? Even though I think we need bowling on TV, it's just, as a business proposition, it doesn't make sense to us. And I had to agree, although we fought, to try to keep it on, but they weren't willing to come up with that kind of money.
Because the proprietors, the only money that they might recoup would be in roll-offs, and maybe,
if you got one.
Right.
Not everyone was. You could have your in-house roll-offs, and you might get 10 or 15 bowlers or something. You get that, and you send so many to the final roll-off. But the big one was the final roll-off. You might get 50 or 60 people.
Right.
But you only get one of those every 8 weeks, and then we had to spread them around to different areas of our membership, which brings up another problem. We're so diverse. It's hard to do advertising that covers everybody. Bowling show, some of them didn't get the bowling show.
Right.
So it was difficult sell, and that's probably what killed it. Yeah.
Well, I remember even back in the 90s when Stars and Strikes was still an established program, that Doug Brown would occasionally say, we picked up a dozen new towns in Western Massachusetts,
Yes,
and now
yeah.
they can. So that's where I feel like, Frank, we've talked about it. You consider. Terrestrial or cable TV versus the internet.
Right.
Anybody that has an internet connection can see it, and you're not looking at maybe $90,000 to kick up to a station, or 125 or what have you. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Especially with the economy changing now. You've been a proprietor since the mid '80s, correct?
Yes.
And how do you see the business changing as a proprietor, and looking at it with wearing that hat versus the competitor versus the producer?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm not a proprietor anymore.
Right.
I sold I still work here at Boutwell's. I could retire, but I just love it. And my wife says, Dan, just retire. I said, no, I got to do something.
Right.
And so it was just sold to the fellow next door that owns the pizza parlor.
Oh, okay.
And at first he said, I'd like to keep it for 3 months. I said, well, I don't know what I can teach you in 3 months. But if you want, I'll give you a price it's going to cost you, or if you want me for a year, I'll give you another price. So as it went on, there was a learning curve, and I think he started to realize that, oh boy, this is a little different. And so I told him, and he's spending a lot of money. He's putting 12 new machines in and stuff. I said, well, you got to stop spending money now, because you haven't been through a summer, and summers are really. I says, I'd like to see where we are next year at this time. Although our contract is for a year, I'll be done in October. And he said, nah, you can stay as long as you want. So I can stay as long as I want now. So I still do the same things that I did when I was a proprietor. Mm-hmm. Now, changing the games, yeah. When I first went into business, our league income was probably 80 to 85% of our income. That's what it was back then. Now, it's probably 50-50. 50 leagues and 50 outside bowling.
That's still pretty high, though.
Yeah, it is.
You have a lot. How many leagues do you have here?
We have, let me see. I would say we have 20 to 25. We have a couple we back up, 6 and 8:30 and stuff like that.
Sure.
But we used to have 3 shifts. We used to have 4 o'clock leagues, and then 6 o'clock, and then 8:15. So I think nowadays, and I told the proprietors this, I think the internet is our worst enemy. Because not only you got the internet, you got video games on the internet, and people, instead of going out and going bowling or something else, they're staying home playing video games. And we talk about the number of lanes that are closing, and we say, yeah, the game's dying. Well, no, the game's not dying as much, but if you went back and see the history of some of these bowling centers, they were built on secondary roads 35 years ago. Well, now that secondary road is a major thoroughfare.
Right.
So someone comes in and says, I'll offer you several $1 million for your property. They figure, how many games of bowling is that?
Right.
And, and then it's gone. So there's still a market out there. Now, you got, on the competitive side, you got the Pro Tour, and it's a great organization. Those people are top-notch that are running it, and I push it every time I can. But here at Boutwell's, we don't have that competitive bowler anymore. It's more of a social thing. I bowl in 3 leagues. 2 of them are mixed leagues, so just fun leagues. And I bowl in a men's league. It's a lot of money and stuff like that. But I think the top averages in that league, you got a couple of people that are around 115, but not your 125 and 130 anymore, at least not here.
Right. Now, on that point, do you feel like the way that the game is structured is that, and as a proprietor now, that the game is trying to gear more towards that average bowler and maybe not the high average bowler, that someone that, maybe 115 is the exception to the rule, and most people are around 90 or 95, and it's more of a social thing rather than someone that really does take it seriously and wants to increase their average from 115 to 20 to 25 to be in the Pro Series that you talked about. Yeah. Is that the way that the business has to evolve to in order to keep?
I think today, if you're going to survive in this business, you've got to go outside and bring corporate parties in and stuff like that. You can't let your league bowlers go. You still got to work at your leagues because they're guaranteed so many, and people don't want to bowl 30, 35 weeks anymore. That's another thing. And they don't want to be out late in that second shift. But to answer your question, I think there's a fine line between the two. And I think more now that you got to cater to the outside bowler, get them in. There's these boutique bowling centers. If you don't have a liquor license, if you don't have an arcade, some of us are landlocked and we can't enlarge any, so we have to do what we have. And I think that's where places like King's in Boston, And as a proprietor, I'm going to tell you that many of the proprietors are afraid to increase their price. And you can't reinvest in your business unless you're making the dollar.
Right.
And I see so many of them now that, I'm afraid to go up. And, well, I think we're meeting some price resistance, but, you keep the place clean, keep your restrooms clean, and give them a nice working, playing atmosphere, they'll pay. They'll pay to come in. But you got to go out and get them now. Yeah, there's too much competition.
Right. Because
It's interesting you say that because I'm involved in the pro circuit, I guess you would say, and of course there's all talk on that side of the game as well, where they say, oh well, if I owned a bowling center, I'd have it $1 a string, and everybody would come and bowl all these games all day. It's like, I don't think so. It's not going to work that way.
No.
And even if you did, you wouldn't be able to survive on that.
No.
Some guy comes in, bowls 3 games, you get $3. It's just not going to work. I mean,
No.
but I'm interested in that because I think as a proprietor, like you were saying, you should be making a premium price for what you're doing, provided you have the facilities.
When I first started owning the bowling center, there were 25, 30, 35 days in a row that I didn't have a day off. And I would come in at 8 in the morning and leave at 11 at night. But that's the thing you had to do to survive until you got ahead a little bit. And I think that's where another problem comes in. You got your next generation of my kids or something. They don't want to work those hours, I
Right.
says, well, you can make a decent living. Well, when you divide it by the number of hours, is it that good? They got a point. But, I still love the game, and I think that's why. They have to charge so they can take that time off. You can't be here all the time. Hire the good help. And I wasn't the smartest business person in the world, but I was able to hire people that had different niches within the business so they could do some of the things that and help me out, and it
Right.
worked really well. In fact, his staff here is still the staff that I hired. One fellow's been here for 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
It is a people business, I think, when you come down to it. And I'm wondering, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't continue with this thought, but I'm wondering, over the years, maybe we've gotten away from not just being friendly, but you're the teacher, Not only you're the teacher in the school, but I mean, even on TV, to me, I thought it was a conscious thought that you went into the description of, this guy throws a backup ball, this guy throws a conventional ball, so the ball's breaking differently, so he's going to want to go high on this shot rather than redline it. And that is something that not only did I find interesting on TV, but I feel like if we are, as a community, if we're more customer focused, perhaps people will come back and it won't matter how much they have to pay because they'll be loyal to you.
yeah, and that's where the instructor school comes in. I look around at some of the leagues I bowl. In fact, I'm giving a lesson Monday night. A fellow just started the league. He threw a couple in the 70s and the low 80s. I said, look, John, I can help you out. Sometimes it's hard to approach people. Some people say, well, I'm fine. Okay, then you walk away. But when I work with him Monday, he may not be any better, but he's going to enjoy the game that much more. And I think that's what I still get excited when somebody hits their highest game ever. Good for you, It still excites me. So.
Well, it requires work to excel or to stop doing the things that you're doing wrong and correct them and do the right things and watch your average grow. And maybe that's why, to your point about video games, maybe some people don't want to put that investment in, even though it's a great game.
I bowl with a lot of golfers. And they said, Dan, I'm pretty good at golf. But that's bowling I can't get. I said, really? I says, how many games a week do you bowl? Well, 3. I said, well, try playing 9 holes of golf once a week and see what happens. How many days a week do you play golf? Well, 3 or 4. There you go.
Right.
If you want to do this, it's hand-eye coordination. You have to do the sport. You have to participate more. You have to come in and practice like anything else.
It's a commitment.
It is. It really is.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at this game, you like we said off the top, you've had many different hats. Competitor, proprietor, the TV side of it. As an executive of the game, what are some of the challenges that you've seen in that role? In a couple different roles in the executive kind of position.
Well, let's take the ICBA, where I was an executive director for I think 7 or 8 years, and we're a dues-oriented group. We need members to pay us so we can do things. And it seems over the years we always got a bad rap. We weren't doing enough. And we were doing whatever we could with the funds that we had. And now you get some of the lanes closing, that's less that we get from the membership, so it's less that we can do. But what a lot of them don't understand that it's a trade organization. If you belong to the ICBA, that means you belong to your local association first. MBA, New Hampshire, Maine, and with that, we belong also to the BPAA, which is the Bowling Proprietors of America. It's a 10-pin organization, don't get me wrong, but they can do mass buying because they're so huge. So we jumped on the coattails. So even the licensing agreement for Glow Bowling, they save thousands of dollars by joining the association. I think that's what we try to tell the members. Look, you can get your dues back tenfold if you take care of the program, use some of the programs that we offer. But the bowler always, well, what do they do for us? Well, we're trying to promote the game for you, but, some of those, they don't want to pay either,
That might be the biggest misnomer about the ICBA, about being for the bowler.
I think so.
When it's really for the proprietor.
Exactly, yeah. And hopefully, if we make the proprietor successful, it'll filter down into the bowlers. And that's what we try to do. But, it's one of those things. A lot of people don't even know who the ICBA is, unfortunately. But,
right, and that's part of what Frank and I have been trying to do, not only being associate members, but also, talking to Liz Moore on the show that we had last year and trying to get it out there as part of the promotion of the game because, well, I always say all the time, it's the greatest in the world.
It is the greatest sport in the world.
I may not be
It really is. It still excites me after all these years.
Sure.
It really is.
Yeah, and I don't know. The game, everything around the game may change. The houses may change, the bowlers change, but the game is still the same. So, I also want to talk about. I happened to be at the last banquet, the last Hall of Fame banquet, and I saw
you were there?
Yes, so I filmed the President's Cup presentation. So that must have been. Well, you have the Hall of Fame before that, and then you have the President's Cup. Are those the two of the biggest honors you've received?
Yeah, someone asked me, what was more thrilling for you, for the Hall of Fame or the President's Cup? And I had to think of it hard because the Hall of Fame was because of what I've done in my career, and I was pretty successful. I had some good runs and stuff like that. But to get the President's Cup, because I always tell my wife and stuff, look, we made a pretty good living at being proprietors. And the game has been very, very good to me. So always trying to give something back. And that's why when you guys said, you give us an interview, absolutely, absolutely. So I think by receiving the President's Cup award, it was telling me that, Dan, they recognize you are trying to give back to the game. And that's what I've been trying to do, and I'll do that until the day I die.
Well, this is a very emotional speech that your daughter gave.
Yeah, and that was a spur-of-the-moment thing with Ralph. She didn't know that. She came out from California to see me receive the award, and he says, hey, you're going to present the award. And she goes, oh my God. She went in the ladies' room with my wife and said, what do I say? But she was good, yeah.
It was very good.
Yeah, I thought so. And like I said, it was very moving, and it's quite an honor. I mean, it's not every day that you get recognized by the governor,
Yeah, it's
for
true.
the accomplishments that you've had in the game. Frank, I feel like I've been dominating this.
That's okay, because you do much better than I do. So I'm also directing over here. So
I'm sorry. The cat's out of the bag, ladies and gentlemen. How can the game evolve to a point where, in terms of the competitive bowling, we can get back close to the level that we were at before, even in 10 years ago?
It's a tough question. I think you have to get all the associations together and have one big tournament where there's a $15,000 or $20,000 prize involved, because numbers excite people.
Right.
And I don't mean to degrade any of the local TV stations, but I rub elbows with some 10-pin proprietors and stuff, and I always say, it's kind of a inexpensive game. It's like a cheap game. We had Channel 5. Even then, you get $700 for winning or something, bonus money. But when you start giving, there was one in Maine, and they do a great job. And I'm not degrading them, but when you give $100 away, that's feeding into that cheap type game. And it's one of those things that I think you need the big egg out in front of them. That's just my opinion.
Do you feel the state associations are too autonomous, perhaps?
That could be part of the problem. I don't know. I think it's a lot of the proprietors, they're getting along in age. They've made their money. They don't want to do anything extra now. They just want to, just take one day at a time. And you have the go-getters, those type of proprietors, and they don't want to get involved either. They want to concentrate on their own business, which I can't blame them. But I think if they looked at the bigger picture, that in the ICBA, you can see the leadership. I mean, we're up there in age. We don't see any of the young proprietors that are out there stepping up and saying, we're going to take over this organization. And I think that's the biggest problem. You got to get these people involved. How do you do that? I'm not so sure.
We need to get a Kings or two, but have it be Candlepin, Frank.
Well, Wamasset's a good start.
Right. Have you been there?
Yes, I have.
What do you think?
That's quite an operation, But they got some big money behind them,
Right.
and it's. I think you need the big splash right away.
Sure.
And then you get them. You got them. But we talked at the last New Hampshire Association meeting about doing things like that. I said, what, that works in Boston and some of the other places, but you got to know your clientele. I says, for me to do that in Concord, I've got 90% of my customers are state and federal employees. They make a lot of money, and so you got to know your clientele and what you can and can't do. We try to run house tournaments, not for big money, but for the fun of it.
Right.
And I think that's what we keep. Look, it's a fun game. Just come and have fun. Forget about the outside world, all the worries you got at home. Come here for 2 hours and have fun. And that's what we're trying to push here.
Do you think that more proprietors should run more house tournaments and not rely or try to rely so much on open bowling?
Again, I was just telling in fact, I mentioned it at the ICBA meeting, and I mentioned it at the New Hampshire meeting. I says, guys, I think we're meeting price resistance where if I go bowling, say, on a Monday night, and it costs me $15 or $16 or $17 to bowl, and then I might have a beer or two, and then I might have a sandwich, well, then I get a side pool of $2 or $3 or $5 here. If I went to the bowling lanes with $50, I go home with $35. Hey, geez, bowling cost me $35. No, it didn't. It cost you like $11.50 or $12. The rest of it was going to your prize money for your league and stuff, but they don't think that way. And I bowl in a mixed league on Friday night, and I'll tell you, that's their night out. That clientele is, it's probably the last dollar they have in their pocket. But they come, they enjoy themselves, and so you got to know your clientele and what you can and can't do. Should you have more house tournaments? It's one of those things. They want to flip up more money for something else. But if they have fun, we ran a 369 for 55 years and older. We got like 48 bowlers. We charged them like $10. So the prize money wasn't very much. But they had so much fun. They said, can we do this again? So there is a limit. There's what you can charge. It's kind of contradicting what I said about the big nut at the end of the tournament. But that's not that type of bowler. That's the type of bowler that doesn't care.
Right. Well, again, knowing your clientele, it all comes down to it. Because certain people will, if you establish enough value, or at least enough, I'm not quite sure what word I'm looking for, but if you have enough value in it, the dollar amount doesn't matter.
No.
Kings can name their own price and put it down. And people will pay that number.
They still have lines out the door.
Right.
Yeah.
It's my contention that sometimes you need to have something else besides bowling. Like, we talk about, Flatbread is not a place that you're going to go to, a 10-stringer, for the Pro Series,
Right.
but you have something else you can fall back on. It's kind of like I can have pizza, but I can also have beer. Or we're at Wamasset and you saw the menu for the restaurant there, and you have something else that brings in that money that you can count on. You don't need to have 300 rainy days in a row to hope for to bring people in.
You talk about Kings, and I'm wondering if I was there 7 days a week, would they have a line out the door every day, or was it Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
I wonder that as well. Yeah, you have a good point, of course.
Yeah, because I sometimes I wonder if bowling isn't going the way of that, is that it'll be like movie theaters. You get your blast Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
And the rest of the day, the rest of the week, you're like restaurants, the same way.
Right.
That's why they have specials on Monday and Tuesday, because they have a slow time. So
right.
Luckily, we still have league play that takes up that slow start. That's why I say you have to keep working those leagues, because that's your slow times. You need those.
Coffee leagues.
The Tuesday morning coffee league.
Right.
Yes.
Exactly. Just make
Yep.
sure you have good coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
I've covered quite a bit.
I think well, yeah, you have. I haven't covered much. But, that kind of goes on what you were saying, Dan, having the big egg at the end of the tunnel, or your prize, whatever. How do you feel about that closest to your average tournament that the ICBA is running?
Oh boy, I think I said it at the ICBA meeting that I really didn't understand the format, and after it explained it to me, I'm going to ask the bowlers when they come in and bowl in the league, give me another $5 and your second game, one game.
Sure.
You're going to qualify. And then at the end of the month, you're going to come back, give me $10, and you're going to bowl one game.
Right.
I couldn't sell it to my people. I really couldn't do it. So I think on the premise, the idea was good.
Sure.
But I think we need to tweak it somehow and get some outside money, and maybe have the associations kick in so much money toward the big prize
Toward
at the
a
end.
guaranteed prize or something like that.
Yeah.
Sure,
and
sure.
then it might work.
Sure.
So
Sure. I think I do think the intention was good. And,
yes.
and
No question.
kind of on the right track.
Yes. No
I can
question.
say that much, but
Well, there's always the summer. Well, maybe not the summer because.
less league play.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, rear it up for the fall. But I want to get back to you working on TV. Did you find it to be easy to adapt to whoever was calling play-by-play? Fouracre, you mentioned that might have been a challenge.
Yeah, he was a challenge. But I can remember when I first started with Doug Brown, I still remember a little piece of paper. Are you going to say anything? So I had to work into it. But Doug was great, because that's, Dan, all I want you to do is talk about the game that you know. Chime in anytime. The biggest thing that we don't want to be talking over each other. So in that part, it took a little while to know, okay, now I jump in, and now Doug jumped. So, it was a couple tapings, and then I started to fall back and relax and just talk about the game. Then it became very easy.
Right.
And I worked with some great, Phil Burton,
Right.
John Holt, some great people and great sportscasters. So they're polished people. So
It was just funny. I happen to remember when the first few episodes of Big Shot Bowling, and when Fouracre would wear the tux every time, and
Yeah.
you asked him if he had a wedding to go to or something after the taping session. And of course, he had to plug Mr. Tux afterwards. Not to mention Fresh Pond Travel and whatever else was there. So, now that's just. It is interesting because everyone has their own style and their presentation of the game is different. And I thought Doug was awesome.
Yeah, Doug's. Yeah, I think he still works for ESPN Radio.
Yeah. I remember because initially I had thought that when Channel 68 had gotten the Celtics rights and the Red Sox rights, I felt like he was missing some tape dates because of that commitment. I thought that might have been the reason, part of the reason why 50, at least the Stars and Strikes from Park Place changed.
Yeah. Well, the station was sold also, and the new people
Right, yeah.
they didn't put it as a priority. So
Right. Everything changes. So,
Dan, what's your take on the possibility of something like Candlepins for Cash these days? Do you think something like that could promote the game to folks who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, if it's going to be on TV, anything on
Of
TV.
course.
Yeah, and that was a talk to Bob Gramere. That was a show that was talked about a lot, and that was your
huge
everyday
number.
bowler.
That's the thing.
And-
It was your average guy off the street
they're just
come in.
would they bowl one ball or one box? I forget.
I think they bowled one box.
Box,
'cause,
yeah.
One box.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, and everybody talked about it. In fact, I remember you on Candlepins for Cash. I was never on Candlepins for Cash, but they related to that. And
Right.
Yeah, it was a great format. And I think that would go. It's kind of a low key. Probably wouldn't be as expensive as the others. So.
And it's anyone can walk in off the street or apply to be on the show or whatever,
Right.
and you get a big sponsor, and
Yeah.
you know, people are talking about Candlepin Bowling again.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, unfortunately, there are people at work or whoever I talk to about it, and I say, yeah, I'm a professional Candlepin bowler. And they say, well, what does that mean? I didn't even know that it existed anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like...
That's a
well,
challenge.
It is.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah.
But it's funny considering the numbers that they drew, especially initially in Boston for Candlepins for Cash.
Sure.
That, remember that clip that I sent Frank a clip a couple of weeks ago from Candlepins for Cash in, you know, maybe the first or second year. So it's like it's a 40-year-old clip, but the money they had for a strike was like $2,400.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and 40 years ago, I mean, that
was
goes a
big
long
money.
way. Not that it, you know, it's a pretty decent piece of change now, but. I mean, I guess I don't know. That's one of the thoughts that you know that we're considering is not only do we want TV back on the air, but we want people to be excited about it, and that's the whole thing, and to be able to go to a roll off or
Right.
whatever. You just put their name in. You know, wouldn't even need a roll off for that.
Right.
You know.
Right.
That'd be
No, I mean, you approach any of these bowlers that are here now at Boutwell's, and you say, hey, you have a shot. You throw one box, you get a strike, you throw a spare, whatever. I don't know what the prize was for a strike or spare, but I think they even had a car that was up for grabs. If you threw a double or something like that,
right.
who's going to say no to that?
I know.
You know, who's going to resist that?
Get a 75 Ford Thunderbird.
Yeah, I would take that if I threw a strike. I'd take
Yeah.
it if I threw a half Worcester.
Yes. But you'd get a buck though. You'd get a
Yes,
buck.
yeah.
Right.
A buck per pin or something like that. Yeah.
Right. Well, you were telling us about your pool, your side pool.
Oh
with-
yes,
with,
yeah. It was kind of funny that, you know, with taping and of course they in the truck they would bet who's going to win the match, and I didn't get involved with that because I'll obviously start rooting against somebody. But no, we used to all throw
Subliminally.
$1 in a pot, and we would guess how many half Worcesters there would be in the 4 shows that we're taping. And so someone, I always question the guys in the truck because I'm involved with keeping score and announcing and stuff. I said, "Are you sure you won?" Well, that's what I have. And so they kept track of it in the truck, so I'm not so sure how honest they were.
That's funny.
How did you? Were you responsible for getting CompuScore to make the scoreboard for 50 initially when they went to electronic?
No. Somebody at 50 made the electronic scoreboard, and then when it went to Comcast, somebody else developed something else.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I don't know who did it there, but they worked at it and they came up with something. So yeah.
Gotcha. I don't know. It just something that off the top of my head.
No, it's a
anyway.
good question. I've always wondered about electronic scoring. I mean, especially with the way computers are now, we really don't have much in terms of Candlepin Bowling for like even a spreadsheet.
Right.
You know, but now Scott Moore has developed one for us, and it works great. But I always wondered how CompuScore. You know, I'm assuming you operated that.
Yes.
On
yes.
the air. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
pretty impressive stuff. I
Yeah.
wonder if the Channel 5 scoreboard, the electronic scoreboard, worked similarly to your CompuScore.
I can't. Did Channel 5 have an electronic scoreboard toward
Yeah,
the
they
end?
did in '86, I think. is
Yeah,
when they
towards the
Oh,
started.
that's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know who would have developed that, how they came about. You got a good IT guy, I'm sure, that can nowadays.
Yeah, sure.
Getting back to the school, the instructor school, are there certain things, and you talked about 8 pins down in a string, but are there other statistics that you try to keep in mind that let you know whether or not you're throwing a good ball or not beyond what you see on the score
It's
sheet?
funny you should say that. When I used to practice, I used to put a dot in a box. When I hit the head pin with the first ball, I put a dot in. When I shot at a spare and I hit the object pin, I may not have made the spare, but I hit the object pin that I was shooting at, I put another dot. And then again on the third ball, if I hit the object pin, if there's still pins out, and I would count up the dots at the end. And if I have over 30 dots, then I bowl pretty well. My score doesn't show it, but I bowl
Sure.
pretty well. So I used to play games like that, and then I would try to pick certain pins off when I'm bowling. Like I said in school, 10 pin is probably the most difficult one. I used to practice on that a lot.
Because I felt like your ball broke quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
that would definitely make it.
Well, right now I've got a bad back, so I'm trying to work that out. But yeah, and doing the school, we do these common faults, and you don't throw the ball that you normally do.
Right.
So
Right.
And again, about the school, Dan, you back in the, I believe it was the 80s, you did the instructional video with Mike Morin on improving your game. You told us a funny story about the double strike that you started with.
Yeah, those are people. First of all, someone said, Dan, when did you do that video? And I said, about 30 years and 40 pounds ago. That's when I did it. In fact, in one of the scenes, you see a young lady sitting by herself behind, and the shot was coming down down the lanes. That's my daughter, who has 3 children now. So that's how long ago that was. But yeah, we did the part on scoring, and I threw like a 122, 123, and they said, the average bowler is going to hit 95. Yeah. So you want me to throw a 95? And you talk about credibility. I said, I'm not throwing a 95. And they had this on the video. So, and then somebody else said that we need the scoring part. We need, it'd be nice if you get a strike and a spare. And I said, well, I can't throw strikes at will, but I'll do it the best I can. And they said, well, let's try it. So I get up there, and first ball I throw was a strike, and the second ball I throw was a strike. I said, well, there we got a double. That's really good. And then I throw a third one and a fourth one. And I ended up with like 190-something, and they said, well, that's totally unrealistic. Let's see if we can try it again. And I said, wait a minute. Can't you splice and start with the first 2 strikes, and we go from there? So that's how that score came about.
Interesting.
It was pretty
so
nice.
Just, start off with a 4-bagger. That's
simple. It's a good recipe for success.
Right.
Yeah. Might as well. Then you don't need any more instruction.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
You've mastered the game.
Right. Make it a 10-minute video and still try to market.
Now I don't throw 4 strikes in a month. So
I haven't thrown 4 strikes in my life, so that's better than me. We want to thank you, Dan, for being part of our very special Alley Chat presentation. And if we can do any more buttering up so that we can get a passing grade for the instructor school, that would be great. But on behalf of Frank and myself and all of us, want to thank you for your contributions to the game of Candlepin Bowling, the greatest in the world. Once again, my name is Kyle Bruce, along with Frank Face, and we'll see you down the road on Alley Chat.